Good afternoon. As all things turn out, yesterday we spent a considerable amount of time consolidating two bins into one bin. Now the bin that we worked with, of course, was this bin. Very simply put, it's a pail essentially, maybe about I don't know, 16, 18, maybe 18 inches at the most tall, and maybe about 12 to 14 inches in diameter. Now, it's quite obvious that the nature of the way the red wiggler worms are going to function, that this may not be the most appropriate solution. Although it does allow us to put everybody in sort of one bin, it doesn't really address the problem of the horizontal movement of how these worms like to, how they like to travel. So it might be time for a slight bit of a return to basics. And by that, what I'm really referring to is slowly acclimatizing the worms to their specific environment as though we had just received them, taking a small different type of bin, and I'll just sort of bring my little tripod around and rotate downward so that you can see, hopefully we'll get it there, that type of bin there, you know, very basic type. The type you'll often see on, you know, so many videos on YouTube, and it's unbelievable. There is so many, which is great, of course. And then what we'll notice as we poke around, me without my poker. I found a better poker anyway since yesterday. So is that, you know, I've already sort of moistened this, and it might actually need a little bit more. So we're going to give it a little bit more of a spray. Where is my spray? Just to give it a sponge-like feel, which is consistent with the way that we really want the worms to be. We don't want soaked worms. We don't want bathing. We don't want them swimming around in water. But of course, we do want to keep them in a nice, moist environment. Now, the one downside of this particular bin, because it was one of the earlier design bins that I had sort of played around with, is that the holes on the side that you may or may not be able to see very well they're relatively large. They're about the size of a Canadian nickel, and this may or may not introduce a certain problem if they decide that they want to you know, run for cover. I don't think that's going to be the case, and as our friends at the Worm Factory have noted in some of their documentation, it's a good idea, at least for a little while, to put a light out here. So I have a light prepared, which I think I'm going to put on top of the bin. This, of course, being the top, and maybe drill a few holes just into the top of the bin so that we get another type of sort of pseudo ventilation. So. That being said, at least that gives us a start. Now, I'm going to pause the camera for just a minute because I'm going to obviously have to get my gloves on. I don't like working with my bare hands. I have rings and stuff, and it's getting close to dinner time, and I certainly wouldn't want to be eating my dinner with hands that are covered in this sort of material. So I'll pause, and then I will, of course, be right back. Okay, so returning into the fray here, brought out my drill, slightly smaller drill bit, maybe not the smallest one I'd like to have, but it's a start. So for the sake of argument, a few little holes, just for the sake of a little bit of breathing. Now, naturally, these worms are not going to be able to make their way out of these holes. There's just no way. And I don't even know how much air inflow and outflow these are really going to provide. But it's you know, it's kind of consistent with the basic design. Maybe I'll put one right in the middle just to be cool. On the sides, of course, perhaps a little lower here, I'm going to drill a couple of holes as well. And again, Nothing's big enough here in terms of holes that these worms will be able to get out of, with the exception of the holes up at the very top of the bin, which naturally I'm going to want to avoid stacking that high. So this is where we reside right now. So let us take our little poker guy here, our bin that we worked on yesterday, rather heavy little guy. See how we can position these collectively, and let's see if there's any zoom out or zoom in. Make sure we're on full wide scale here, okay, just so we can get a good perspective of what we're dealing with. And then I'm going to try to find something else that we can dig a little deeper into that barrel with. Something like my little poker stick, but perhaps a little tougher, and certainly nothing that's going to harm or hurt any of the worms that are there. I do like to use barbecue tools, oddly enough. One thing we have in abundance in my home for some reason are a bunch of barbecue tools, so maybe these will be sufficient. Right. I'm not going to be flipping steaks with those anytime soon. So we'll use that. And have another cursory glance around my furnace room for anything else, and I think this will suffice. Plus, it gives us the grippable sort of concept. All right, so let's open this up and let's look at what we sort of dealt with. Now, this morning when I came, and actually it's kind of interesting because right off the bat there's a worm rather close to the top. I did try to stir this up a bit, this bin, and I added water, which of course became necessary. I think that in one of my neglecting patterns, I was just not contemplating the fact that water plays such a integral part into the whole breeding process, things like that, as does calcium and some of the other products that we put in here. And so last night, as per usual, when I went to bed, where I have all my deep thoughts, I started thinking, well, you know, this is all well and good, but maybe we're just not making the right progress the right way, the way that I would prefer it. Now, the way that I would prefer it, just to be accurate, is very much the way that we claim that these things should start out. And I guess when we talk about that, what we're really talking about is the fact that that these creatures, they do a lot, obviously. There's no question there. But they have to begin somewhere, and where they begin and how they begin is very, very important. So the one concept, of course, that's always been in the forefront, whether we're dealing with little bins or whether we're dealing with vertical bins, horizontal bins, whatever kind of bins you want to call them, depending on the types of worms that you're using, is that a left-to-right approach seems to have been sort of the best startup solution for most people in the beginning. Sort of position the food, let the worms climatize as they move left to right. And so that is what I'm proposing to do this time around. I've also got some calcium carbonate on the way and some eggs, oddly enough, boiling right now, which I'm going to have to pause, and probably because I forgot about them right now. And I'm going to run upstairs, check how my eggs are doing, and then we'll come back down and we'll continue with this, and we'll move what's in here basically into here in a hopefully a well-structured way, so that we can sort of track the flow. If it means we got to take a few things out, well, guess what? We'll just do that. That's how it'll work out. Okay, so I'll go check my eggs, and again, we'll resume in a moment.